So now the question is, can it stop down the same hill well? It's a little bit slick, so I better give myself some room. This is a brand new bike from Snapcycle. It is called the R1 PRO. There is both a step over version and we have this nice step through in what I think is a really awesome purple color. I usually don't care about paint jobs. They are what they are, but I like this purple, and we've had it in the shop for maybe a couple of days, and I feel like everybody who's seen it says, ooh, that's nice. We carry Snapcycle bikes in the shop. Surprisingly, this is the first Snapcycle bike I have put on the dyno for a video, so I'm excited to see what their brand new bike can do. The reason they call this the Pro version is because they have updated it, so it's now using a torque sensor. You've got a bike that comes in under $2,000 with hydraulic brakes, a throttle, front suspension, a 750 watt rear hub motor, the headlights integrated into the bars and the screen, but I'm gonna go over all of those details later when it's not pouring down rain outside. Right now, let's just see how much power and torque this thing actually has. Now, because it's raining, I haven't even ridden it, so I have no idea what this even feels like power-wise, being a brand new model from them. I'm just gonna take a guess and say it's gonna come in right about here. I'm gonna guess it's gonna peak over 1,000 watts. We'll hope for the best and see what happens. And just a quick refresher, if you haven't seen one of these dyno videos, I got the power in kilowatts, so we should see over 1.0 if I want to see over 1,000 watts. The torque in foot-pounds is right here, and our speed in miles per hour, that's just for verifying the speed on the display versus what the bike is telling us. It's nice to see if these things are actually accurate, and often they're not. So one of the reasons I think it will do 1,000 watts is because the bike comes with a pretty large 48 volt, 20 amp hour battery. Higher capacity always means less voltage drop, means better power. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm gonna put it in Assist 5 just in case that makes a difference. Often it doesn't. Oh, integrated brake lights, that's nice. And let's just give it full power right off the bat and see what happens. In 3, 2, 1. Come on, you can do it. Look at that. So there's probably a way to adjust it because there is on other Snapcycle bikes, but it is definitely limited to 20 miles an hour. I got 20 on the display right now. My reading over there is saying like 19.8, 19.7. So the speedometer reading is really close. That's not gonna make a difference for the wattage or torque settings, but I'm sure that there is a way to unlock that and actually do more than 20 miles an hour. And there it is. We got 1,082 watts. That's not bad. And 29 foot-pounds of torque. That's actually pretty good. Well, I didn't get it exactly right. I was guessing it was gonna fit here beneath the Troxus tracks and the Mach Wheel basalt. And in fact, it's actually gonna bump the Troxus tracks down just a hair. It barely squeezed it out. That one came in at 29.05 foot-pounds. This is 29.13 and about 20 plus 25, 30 watts more on power, which are both really impressive compared to that bike. That one was more of a commuter bike with skinnier, smoother rolling tires. This has obviously knobby fat tires, so that means this thing really does have a little bit more power than that for sure. All right, let's ride this thing for real. The sun is starting to come out, roads are drying up, and it is still a little chilly. Silly me. I have gloves in my pocket. Not gonna do me any good in there. Yeah, I do. I used to film with GoPros all the time, and every once in a while I'd have some reliability problems. I had the regular GoPros, the Fusion 360, and then I switched to the Insta 360, and now I got 2 of these, and that's all I use.
Thanks for talking to me.
Yeah, no problem. So power-wise, this is, like I said, they've upgraded to a torque sensor, but I don't have to pedal very hard. It does pick up really easily, even on 1. Let me pedal harder. Oh yeah, there's that torque sensor working. That's pretty good power, even only on assist 1. Bump it up to 2. It's very responsive. One thing you always get from a torque sensor that you just never get from a cadence sensor is the immediate pickup from a stop. So if you're on a stop sign back there and you want to go right away, if you got a throttle, of course you can always just hit the throttle and go. But if you don't, the cadence sensor requires a little bit of a rotation before it starts to kick the motor in. With a torque sensor, it knows, hey, I want to pedal right now, immediately, and the bike goes. It's something you just have to ride and try it once, and you'll immediately feel the difference. Now, if you've never ridden a bike with a cadence sensor or a torque sensor, it's not that big of a deal. You wouldn't notice, but side by side, night and day. Now, I'm not one to say a torque sensor is better 100% of the time, because I can't always pedal very hard because I don't have the strength. It's not always better for me. If the bike has a throttle, I'd probably say, yeah, the torque sensor could be the better way to go. It definitely is considered an upgrade in most cases. It is more expensive, and it does provide what I would say is a more natural riding experience. You pedal harder, you go faster. You pedal slower, you go slower. It just feels right. Let's crank it up to 5 and see how fast it takes off. Pretty good. It feels nice. And the bike, for being a fat tire bike, rolls really nicely as well. I do have the tires pumped up either right at the max or close to it from the dyno test. Let's go find a really steep hill. So if you want to test out the torque of an e-bike, of course, if you want specific numbers, you put it on the dyno. And we already got those figures. But next, you take it to a really steep hill like this, and you see how it does carrying you up with minimal pedaling.
I'm watching all your videos.
Thanks. Thanks for watching. So like I said, I am not very strong. So I'm just shifting down into first gear, but I have the assist on level 5, but it is using the torque sensing. So even at a very minimal amount of effort on my part, it's climbing up this hill. Now if I pedal harder, immediately takes off, starts flying up the hill. This bike's got the power to climb up any of the steep hills around here. Now brakes wise, it's got hydraulic brakes from Logan, 180 millimeter rotors. So now the question is, can it stop down the same hill well? It's a little bit slick, so I better give myself some room. And no problem, I could have locked up the brakes if I wanted to. The front basket wasn't installed out of the box on this bike. It wasn't terrible, but one thing to note is that the way the wires were wrapped, the basket couldn't be installed without rewrapping some of the cables right in the front. Now we do sell these bikes, the Snapcycle brand, here in our shop. So of course, if you're picking it up from us, we're gonna do all that for you anyway, so not anything really to worry about. But so far, I like this. It handles nice, real low step through. It's got the big 20 amp hour battery. Torque sensor feels good. There's a button underneath the throttle, so you can actually turn it off. So technically I would call this a class 2 bike because it has a throttle, but because it has a button, where you can immediately disable it. That means this could be, boom, it's a class 1 bike right now. Only pedal assist, 20 miles an hour. Push the button. Now it's a class 2. I have a throttle, and if we bump the speed limit up and keep the throttle off, we can call this a class 3. So very flexible as far as how it's categorized. Let's stop real quick and just give it a blip of throttle. A little bit of a slow start, just enough that it doesn't lurch when it takes off. It's not gonna like spin the tire, even if the ground's wet. But as soon as it starts going, then the power picks up very quickly. And then you get to feel the torque and the power it's got. Hey, there's a guy on a bike. Let me show you some of the other features that are on this bike, point out some of the things you may or may not like. Color-wise, it looks great. Like I said, really unique purple. I like the finish. I always liked, from the very first Snapcycle bike I reviewed, the way they do their logo in this kind of silvery color changing gloss. It just looks really cool in person. This is, again, a 20 amp hour battery, so easily 40, 50, 60 miles of range. They've done a lot of kind of the seamless welds on all of the frame, so fit and finish, everything looks really good that way. Now it does have lights. This is just a reflector, but these integrated into the frame are the tail lights, brake lights, and turn signals. Now, positioning wise, they're not in a great spot. They're kind of hidden by the rack a little bit, but it does have integrated lights front and rear. So this is with the braking. If I turn the lights on, you push the up button to turn the lights on. So now those are just going to stay on. And if I brake, I get more lights. And then you have the second set of buttons right here. That's the turn signals. So these are kind of interesting the way they work. If you press the left turn signal, there you get that flashing. That's what it looks like with the lights on. And you get the yellow LEDs just flashing like that with the lights off. Now to turn off the turn signal, you got to press the left button again. It doesn't turn off automatically. You have to press the button a second time. And then the same thing for the right. And you can also, if I hit both of those buttons, now I've got both left and right on. Kind of looks like flashers. Now, if you wanted to, you could just leave them on like that for safety, especially if you're riding at night. Then you just have some flashing kind of constant lights. It is adding a little bit of visibility. Like I said, the downside is directly from the back, you know, it's going to be a little harder to see. As soon as you come off to the side a little bit, you know, imagine if I was a car in the road and you're riding on the shoulder, you're going to see it a little bit easier. Now the screen is definitely interesting. It is one that's integrated into the handlebars. The advantage to that is it does give the bike a nice sleek design. It also is really well protected, I feel like. When the screens are mounted up here, well, you know, sometimes people whack them on things or they break the mounts. It's not a big deal, but you know, with this, really that shouldn't happen because it's kind of recessed in here. Even if the bike was flipped completely upside down and you scratched this up, you shouldn't be able to damage the screen. Downside is not actually replacement. Screens like this are actually very easy to swap out. I've done that on some other bikes. The downside is if you wanted to change the handlebars, you really can't without changing to a totally different display. So that's just a personal preference. If you're not going to change the bike, this actually works great. It's very visible. You've got the basic settings on there. So your pedal assist settings, miles per hour, battery life, and your mileage. It's really easy to see even in full sun. Hopefully it's showing up on camera here. It's the little button I was talking about that enables or disables the thumb throttle. So rear rack, front basket that mounts onto the frame, front suspension, fairly basic, does have a lockout switch. It is again running 180 millimeter rotors with these hydraulic brakes from Logan, which are working quite well. And then as you saw in the dyno test earlier, this is a 750 watt motor with realistically a peak power well over 1,000 watts. For shifting, we're using a tried and true 7-speed Shimano rear derailleur and freewheel. Altogether, I feel like the Snapcycle brand, one of the reasons I decided we would carry them in our store is because the quality was very good for the price. They're all very reasonably priced bikes. So to have something with a big battery, a good torque sensor, a nice powerful motor, turn signals, lights, racks, you know, coming in under $2,000, it's just a really good buy and it makes sense. So once again, this is the Snapcycle R1 PRO. It's brand new. They just came out for this year. And of course, you can come get them at Area 13.